Good afternoon. I am the last speaker, and this is the afternoon session, and I'm the lucky guy. So that I will do my best to present this thing in a more stimulating way. See, the title is Can One Count on AI? It's not a direct application, but this one is to question the main pitfall or the shortcoming of this AI. In that regard, it's a bit more comprehensive thing. By the way, I'm Mehmet Orhan, and I am teaching in the Advanced Data Analytics Department of the University of North Texas. So we came a long way from Texas to here. And this one is the outline of the presentation. I'm going to start with the motivation. So what was the main reason behind this thing, And then there's a short chronology of AI, but I'm going to touch on just a few things here. And we are already familiar with the popular generative AI tools, but I'm going to address just this Gemini, GPT-4, and Microsoft's Copilot. And then there are the early impressions on these, but I'm going to mainly focus on the failures of these. The use of AI and the use of generative AI. And I have some of my own examples just to illustrate the main point of this presentation. And then I'm going to address the shortcomings of the AI tools. And there is the Gartner's hype cycle, which I thought would be very useful in this presentation. I'm going to locate where AI currently is from the official page of the Gartner, and then I'm going to talk about my opinion, and I'm going to conclude with the remarks. So let's start with the motivation. AI is everywhere, and there's a harsh competition in the industries, among companies, nations, countries, everywhere, so that no country has the luxury of stepping back. Chinese companies or the US companies, Argentina, no one of them will be able to say that I'm stepping back and I won't be using AI. It's impossible because they have to survive within the market, and they should be producing the same thing with a lower cost maybe, or the service, let's say, so that they will be using this AI for sure. And it is going to be used more and more. There's no question about this thing. I put one statistic here actually. So in 2023, last year, the AI market was accounting for, let's say, almost $200 billion. And the estimations are telling us that by 2030, it will be $1.8 trillion. This means a very, very huge growth rate of something like 37% yearly. And it's compounding. If we move back to, let's say, 2050, then it is going to be a huge, huge amount, right? So why is this thing, why is it getting more and more popular? The first thing is the availability of data. Thanks to the internet, there is data everywhere, and they are making use of this thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is the development of the algorithms to process this data. And the third one is the falling cost of computer power, thanks to NVIDIA and the other chip producers. They are making this thing available. The fourth thing here is, depending on the first three actually, but it is the interesting awareness of potential benefits of AI, so that the companies know about this thing, and the job openings of data analysts and AI users, specialists, is getting more and more. And the thing is, there are many people who are being trained to get the certificates or even have the majors or the master's degrees. We are looking at this picture from this side. On the other side, the HR managers are saying that they are looking for someone, but those someone are not qualified enough. They would like to recruit, but the thing is, the market is missing those guys who are the real experts on AI. That is why. So if there's a real data analyst, then be sure that the guy is going to be recruited somewhere with those 6-digit salaries. Okay. And we don't expect any one of these to be falling in coming years. That's why actually the use of AI is going to be more and more in the near future, maybe in the medium run and in the long run. The thing is, it is getting more and more popular, but we know that none of those AI systems is perfect. So that we cannot rely on the data. We don't know that the data sets are perfect, not at all. We know that they are biased, and especially in social media, there's the reliability of the data. You and I, we can just sign in somewhere, and I can introduce myself as the winner of this award, and you can introduce yourself as the commander-in-chief. It's anything possible. There's no check there, and then so that there's no reliability of the data, let alone the data produced by, let's say, some surveys, and there is the reliability of that thing. That is to be discussed. That's the first thing. The second thing is to address the algorithms or the computational part of this thing. We know that none of those codes or code developers are perfect, and the algorithms running there are not perfect as well. Even for those technology giants, for Google, they are making use of those patches actually and fine-tuning just to adjust for something. And the third thing is that those deep learning models are overly complex, and they are calling it black box, and I strongly believe in this thing. I mean, we know how the mechanism is running. I mean, the feed-forward neural network and then back propagation and optimization of the parameters. But currently, we know it's publicly available that GPT-4 is optimizing 1.7 trillion parameters in its run. And the training time is months, actually. It's not even days with those supercomputers. So that it is a big deal, actually. So, that there are the layers of this deep learning algorithms, and there are many nodes on those things. And there's a technique being used, and many of them are using what we call the transformers, which is a subfield in the recurrent neural networks. And it's not easy to design it that way. And they're using the checkpoints, and when you stop it somewhere and check for those checkpoints, even understanding that thing is not going to be that easy. So that we are facing these serious challenges for these AIs. And this is to address those things actually. Why is this thing happening? And should there be something done to, let's say, at least resolve these to some certain extent? Now that this thing is the chronology of AI, and it started only in mid-1950s, where the first question was raised as, is it possible to make machines handle the functions of the human brain? That was the starting point. I personally would answer this question with a no, but the experts in the field, say Alan Turing, said yes, at least in principle, so that the things have become, although by, let's say, the artificial intelligence, this has nothing to do with the human intelligence. I mean, we even don't know about the structure of the human brain, I'm sorry. They are working on this thing, and there's much to be done, and it's still a mystery, actually. We really don't know how the human being is being trained, how the human brain is being trained. We really don't know how the learning algorithm is being run there. We really don't know how we are keeping the things in our memories, actually. Those are all mysterious, and still there is some. And the branch of science on this thing is neuroscience, and they are working a lot. And the training we have in the AI perspective is just making use of predictions in the best performance. That's the only definition we have. And it has, I wouldn't say that there's nothing related to human, but I would say that it was inspired from the human brain, and that's it, actually. That's the relation between the machine learning and the human learning, the artificial intelligence and the human intelligence, okay? Maybe I should be addressing a few more things here, actually. In 1997, the design of the AI, the Deep Blue, was able to win or beat the master of chess in that year. He was Garry Kasparov, was addressed in the second keynote, actually. That was the point when people said that, all right, there must be something in this thing because the achievement was great. By the way, there was a very nice talk by Garry Kasparov, and he was addressing this thing, actually, and he starts with a joke saying that, I won in the first match, actually. No one is addressing that thing, but everyone's addressing where I was beaten. It is true, actually. I mean, so that he beat it. And it was the last time the machine was beaten by the human being. And ever since that time, the computer is always winning, and still it is winning. So that there is something in it, right? And then there was this AI winter, and maybe I should be going until this 2017. The second keynote addressed this thing, actually, this AlphaGo. It is some sort of a game changer in that it is not using the historical data, but you are giving the rules to the machine, and it is generating its own data. I mean, it is playing chess within itself and then generating the data and then using that data. The thing is, this is the leader now, and it is the best for the time being. So that it's not the machine or human being winning anymore, it's the machine, but big giant is going to be winning this thing. That is the question now. Okay. So that I put another chronology here. This is just for last 2 years. And you all remember less than 2 years ago, OpenAI introduced this ChatGPT, and we all started using this thing. And then you know the rest of the story, and there is this GPT 3.5, and then there is this GPT 4, and still they're working on 4.0, and they're working on this 4.1. And BART was introduced by Google, and they made use of this Google, and now that BART has this, Google has this Gemini that I guess we are using very extensively. And on the other side, Microsoft has introduced this Copilot, and many are using this Copilot, and they are working almost the same way, but I guess I put, so that starting from this ChatGPT, I put some certain characteristics of this thing. We all remember the first days we tried this thing, right? I mean, just prompting something and getting some satisfactory answers, and we were almost, let's say, fascinated with the performance of OpenAI's ChatGPT, but very soon that impression was reversed, and we started saying that there is something wrong in this thing, right? I mean, even with the nuisance and the prompt, it is generating the same thing, and later on, the professionals started complaining about this thing and saying that this is not true. It is addressing some scientific papers, but there are no such papers full It is hallucination, full hallucination actually. There's no such thing actually. And then the other thing is that it was so confident in its expressions, we all used to believe in this thing. Later on, this was realized, and then currently, if you use Gemini, it's going to be just announcing that these are just the things it is doing, and you have to cross-check for the information, the content of that thing. Means actually you have to keep an eye on this thing, right? So that this was ChatGPT, and I put this Microsoft Copilot, similar things actually, but it's a great achievement. They have integrating this thing to Windows, and similarly, let me move on to Gemini by Google, and Google is integrating this thing to the other Google tools in that regard. One characteristic of this Gemini is maybe it is very good at code development. I tried it a few times actually. It is, I mean, you tell the code and it is giving you the code actually, and not in Python only, in the other coding languages actually. It generates them, and it is working actually. I tried it many times and it is working, right? And it has the limitations thanks to the first and second keynotes that I'm not going to speak all of these things, but I'm going to address the bias so that the success of AI depends on the quality of the data set, training data set it is using. And we all know for sure that that data set is not perfect, let alone the data sets that the data they are using in social media. There's no reliability of this thing. And there is the bias of any data set that the AI is being trained on. I'm primarily speaking about the generative AI tools, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the hallucinations. It is generating something and even citing some papers, some work actually, but there is no such thing. And this thing is called hallucination, and we are very familiar with this thing. There are ethical concerns, I mean, especially about privacy, and they don't care about it at all actually. I mean, what they care about is maybe leading in the market. There is the environmental impact and dependency on the quality of data and limited understanding. I will be addressing this understanding, and that's going to be the main issue of this presentation. So that the additional thing I put here is overfitting. It's a term in machine learning. I'm not how much we are familiar with this thing, but when it is going to be learning perfectly, it will be learning the idiosyncratic noises in the training data set. But the point is that this should be generalized to the validation data set or testing data set. It shouldn't be done that way. So that there is a very delicate balance there, and they are not able to keep this balance working. That is why we suffer, or it suffers usually from overfitting, if it doesn't suffer from underfitting, which is the other side of the same thing, the same process. Okay. And I put some examples here actually, and some of them are really easy, some of them are really interesting, and maybe this is the fun section of this presentation. I will be asking for your attention, please, so that this is an interesting question actually. I used to ask this to some children to have some fun actually, and it's a very interesting story. So that, let's suppose that three animals, I put donkeys here actually, are walking one after the other, and the first donkey says there are two donkeys behind me. The second one naturally says there's one ahead of me and there's one behind me. And the third one should say there are two donkeys ahead of me. But instead of that one, the third donkey says there's one ahead of me and there's one behind me, right? This is the question. So how is this possible? I used to ask this to some children actually to have some fun, and some of them said, I mean, no problem with the first and second donkey's statements, right? I mean, they are correct, but the third one should be saying there are two ahead of me, but instead it says there's one ahead of me, there's one. And then when I'm asking this to children, some of them said the third donkey is lying, definitely. It's a very nice answer and reasonable answer from a child, but it has a reason in it, right? And usually their fathers and mothers gave the correct answer, saying that they're walking on a circular path, right? This is what we think, so that the third donkey's reference point is also correct, actually. I fed this thing to Gemini, and you see the answer here, right? So that, oops, I'm sorry. It's a similar thing, and this is the answer and this was very recent, actually. I did this thing on October 7th. I did it a few months ago, and it was saying similar thing, but and this is the answer, actually. No problem with the first donkey and the second and third donkey. Sees only one donkey ahead, the second, and one behind itself. This is ridiculous. There's no reasoning in this thing. This is totally incorrect, right? And the answer I received a few months ago was similar to this thing, actually, so that it explains it, and then it says, this is a classic riddle that plays with the perspective of each donkey, and then tries to explain this thing with some relative views, let's say, but this doesn't make any sense, actually. And this Gemini is the same Gemini that is producing, let's say, the algorithm of AlphaGo that is beating all the remaining giants procedures for chess playing, actually, and the same for chess, actually. It's the same Gemini, actually. So that, I mean, the work it is doing on one side is, I don't know how to define it, fantastic. The work it is doing on this thing, you can try this thing, actually. I can send you the text and you can try it, actually, is I don't know, ridiculous, actually, right? So how is this possible? That's the question. And I put another one, actually, and this is by ChatGPT, not to blame Gemini only, actually. It's a classical question. If it takes 3 hours for 3 towels to dry on the line, actually, they put it separately, how long does it take for 9 towels to dry? So that there's the direct proportionality, inverse proportionality, and it makes use of this thing, and it says, if it takes 3 hours for 3 towels to dry, then it will take 9 hours for 9 towels, and then you know the logic of this thing, right? And then there are similar questions, actually. So if it takes one, let's say, woman to give birth to one baby, 9 months, then how long will it take 3 mothers to give birth to one children? And then it uses the same logic and says, says ridiculous, the 3 months, and then does the math, actually, very simply. What is missing here is the reasoning. There is no logic behind this thing, and we all know, that GPTs, G is generative, P is pre-trained, and T is transformer, right? I mean, it's the transformer running. It's a many-to-many sequence programming, actually, right? So that many from the input side is that you are putting the prompt there, and it's a sequence, and the other many output is the answer of this thing. It's a transformer. It has no logic in it, actually. What it does is, I mean, you know how these algorithms are running, actually, and then it assigns a weight to each of those words in the vocabulary and keeping the vocabulary so large, and then it is putting those outputs one by one, and this is how it works. This is how a typical transformer runs, actually. It is running that thing. Yeah, please go ahead.
So what if you feed the right answer to Gemini and ChatGPT? Does it, or you ask again, like you reason, that's not true, this is true. Does it try to retrain itself on that answer?
I didn't do it, but it's a very good idea. But I've done this thing, not with this question, but somebody, it apologizes. It says that I was wrong, I'm sorry, and then, yeah, most probably this is what's gonna happen, I don't know. I didn't try it, but it's a very good idea. Yeah, you can.
I tried a similar thing. It was the first spring, I tried some math problems on ChatGPT, and it gives wrong answer, and then I said, are you sure? And then it said, oh, I am sure.
Yeah, it apologizes.
Then it gives the correct answer, and if you say, are you sure? And then it again says, oh, I am sure, and then
yeah, I mean, there's not much of reasoning here, so that I have some limited time, and so that I asked some further questions, actually. And why did President Biden cry at the DNC? Simple, plain question. And even if Google searched this thing, didn't give a satisfactory answer. You can try these, actually. What is LeBron's favorite color? And the answer was wrong and simple. And I don't know why it's making some simple mistakes. And name 3 professors affiliated with this university. If it's a reputational university, it gives you the correct answer. If the university is not that famous, it says that there are some professors. It sometimes gives some blank answers, actually. I have very great difficulty in, I mean, translating this thing into the performance of these, right? So that there are several others, but this one is really interesting, actually. This is a footage of 2 or 3 minutes long, and so that the truck is overturned here, and this poor guy is the driver and is on the highway to warn the others, saying that slow down because there is the overturned truck here. Indeed, it's a footage, but it's just one picture here. You don't see the Tesla. So that Tesla approaches the overturned truck and it doesn't slow down. Until the last moment, I thought that it should be making a sharp brake and would save, but it doesn't actually. It hits the truck and it jumps the truck, right? So that we are convinced totally that there is something wrong in the training of these, right? And we know the story. Training data set is never 100%, let's say, generalized to testing data set. This is what's happening. I have some more examples actually. This is the driverless taxis. They stop on the street for no reason and they block the traffic, right? And then there are several others. This guy is a very, very successful journalist, calls a taxi, this is the taxi, and stops somewhere else and she starts running and then gets in and inputs the address and then this is also a very interesting footage actually. And then it's traveling for 5 minutes time and then so that we came and thanks God, she says, and then the taxi doesn't stop there, takes a U-turn, comes back and then stops somewhere else actually. It's very interesting. And this is, I have just two more slides, and this is the very famous Gartner hype cycle, right? It's true for all the hypes. And so that we have all those breakthrough inventions over here, and this is, as I said, this is from the official site of Gartner, right? And then there is the downturn, and it is stated there that we are somewhere around here. For many of those breakthrough inventions, what happens is that there is the downturn in the expectations, and then there is going to be more efficient use of this thing, and then it stabilizes, and it is me. This is what exactly has happened with internet, for instance, right?
But we did not reach the feedback.
Yeah, that would be my next comment, actually. I mean, this is what you see officially, but I personally think that we are not actually, still we are climbing. Maybe these should be put over the sloping side of this thing, and we are somewhere around here, I guess. And there seems to be a long way to go for this AI.
I see artificial general intelligence, are we there? We are not there yet.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, but I don't know why they've generated it this way, but this is what they put. This is on their website currently, and taking this thing, and so that is almost it, actually. I'm going to just go with these very fast, and then I'm going to make just one comment here. This is the reasoning and logic. It is what is primarily missing here. I mean, for the example, and I really don't know what they shall be doing this thing. And in math theory, we know that the set theory and probability theory are the two basic things, and they make use of the axioms in those theories, right? I mean, and they built the entire thing on those things, actually. So the first time I listened to AI in a seminar was more than 3 decades ago, and the main problem addressed was that they were not able to define what exactly the human intelligence is, and still I feel like they are not able to define what exactly the human intelligence is. And it is some sort of a mystery. I'm sure that there are emotions in this thing. And there are several other things that we cannot define here. I mean, so we know what AI is actually. It's these circuits in the CPUs actually, something physical actually, and the human being is somehow different than that thing. Having said that, I'm going to conclude my presentation, and if there are any questions, I would be glad to answer. All right. Yeah.
I just want to add, there is a new version, it's called not one, meaning, and I ask your donkey question here, if you say, if it is, which donkeys are walking in a straight line, it is contradiction, and then if there is circular formation, this is possible.
Which one is that?
This is ChatGPT, not one.
Oh, I see. I mean, there. Maybe, I mean, it's been about, less than that. But what they're doing is they're fine-tuning these things continuously, actually. There are many other silly things, and they're working on those things. Maybe they fixed this one as well, I don't know, I'm not sure. So that was it, and this is the end of now I'm speaking as the session chair, and we are closing the session, and I guess we are right on time, 3:30. So that's it for this afternoon, for this session.